So we have some long-term effects, or we have some echoes of these revolutions going on. Not just simply the fact that we have smaller revolutions occurring in 1830, 1848, and also 1870. I mean, France is going to be in upheaval throughout this time period. They're going to have a revolution in 1830. So are the Belgians and the Greeks. In 1848, pretty much every place other than Europe and England is going to have a revolution. And 1870 we'll get into later, but we're going to have some revolutions and some unification movements as well. But beyond just simply the act of revolution, there's going to be some ideas that are going to be an outgrowth of these revolutions. And these include abolitionist, nationalist, and feminist movements are all going to arise to question other patterns of exclusion and oppression, not just simply revolutionary upheaval. And what we're getting into, and you want to put this down here next to number 4 here underneath the unlabeled sentence, you want to put down that this is the age of the isms. And isms is ISMS. So it's abolitionism, nationalism, feminism, socialism, communism, liberalism, republicanism. All those different isms are going to be outgrowths of these revolutions, especially the French Revolution here as well. And the first ism we're going to deal with is going to be abolitionism. This is going to be one that will essentially be completely and totally dealt with here. Slavery was largely ended around the world between 1780 and 1890. 1890, by the way, or 1888, around in there, in through that, is going to be when Brazil finally gets rid of slavery. During the Enlightenment, and this is something that we didn't really touch on too much, the Enlightenment thinkers were increasingly critical about slavery. Now, it's not necessarily that the Enlightenment thinkers are looking at the Africans and seeing their humanity. They're not seeing them as being equal to themselves, or indeed even being human or being of the same level. But they're going to make an argument that slavery is basically an old school institution. We don't need it anymore. The American and French revolutions focused attention on the slaves' lack of liberty and equality. And with the American Revolution, they just simply look past it and continue to have slavery until the end of the Civil War. The French are going to get rid of slavery, put slavery back, and then get rid of slavery. The French really can't make up their minds with this. But the biggest idea for the Enlightenment thinkers is that there's a growing belief that slavery wasn't necessary for economic progress. Remember, the Enlightenment was very forward-thinking and was all about moving forward, about progressing, and they looked at slavery as something that was old school, something that was antiquated, something that we no longer need, and we just need to get rid of it. Again, we're not really looking at treating the Africans equally or looking at their humanity. Instead, hey, this is just an old institution, let's get rid of it. We also have 3 major slave rebellions in the British West Indies that showed that slaves were discontent. And the brutality of the suppression of these slave rebellions are really going to appall some people. It's really, really going to disgust them. The abolitionist movement is going to be most powerful within England. In fact, this is going to be where it starts. And resistance to abolition is vehement among interested parties. I mean, there's a lot of wealth in the slave trade, and there's a lot of wealth to be made through the labor of slaves. So you have people for economic reasons as well as for racial reasons. Let's not forget that these guys are just hatefully racist. There's a lot of people who don't want to see an end to slavery for those particular reasons. Ultimately here, unfortunately, at the end of the day, even when the end of slavery comes, it often doesn't lead to the expected results. Usually there's little improvement in the economic lives of former slaves. They're still a poor other. They oftentimes will lack any type of political power and economic power. So they end up having to be in institutions that are near slavery, like, for example, tenant farming, where they're not necessarily property, but their labor certainly continues to be exploited. There's also the unwillingness of former slaves to work on plantations that led to a new wave of global immigration, especially from India and China. In the United States, we're especially going to see in the West Coast a lot of Chinese immigrants coming because of the labor void that we have once we get rid of slavery. And you'll also see other workers coming in from India and China going all over the going all over the British Empire to fill the gap that previously slaves had had filled. Few of the newly freed gain anything like political equality. Again, the freed Africans don't have voting rights. They don't have any larger political say. The exception for this, and I want you to put this down here next to C. Do you want to put down the exception is Haiti? I mean, remember just from a couple days ago when the Haitian Revolution occurs, or once it's successful, the political equality of all people is declared. So in Haiti, the slaves or the former slaves do have political rights. Again, that's going to be the only place where that will be immediately following emancipation. Most Russian serfs are going to remain impoverished. Serfs, by the way, they're not slaves, they're not property. But like slaves, they do have very, very limited rights. And you're going to kind of see that these people will come back to with some of the Russian problems that are going to occur in a couple revolutions in the 20th century. More slaves are going to be used within Africa to produce export crops. And especially, by the way, and you want to put down here next to E, because this is something that we'll deal with in a later chapter, especially rubber. Put down next to E underneath number 6, especially rubber. And that's going to be a really kind of dark and underhanded thing that we'll deal with in a later chapter. In the Islamic world, slavery persisted, but freeing of the slaves is encouraged. It's encouraged to do good deeds, such as freeing those slaves. And I think, like I told you before, in another chapter, the Islamic slave trade begins well before the Atlantic slave trade and will continue well after the Atlantic slave trade. We also are going to have some black market activity going on here within the Islamic world and the slave trade as well. With nations and nationalism, this is going to be a little bit of a long-held thing. This is definitely going to be an ism that we'll be talking about from this point on. So these revolutionary movements gave a new prominence to a more recent kind of community, better known as the nation. You want to put down here next to 1. In fact, you can put it, because again, my notes look different than your notes, but you should be at the bottom of page 7. You can put this here underneath number 1. You can put it right at the bottom of the page. You want to put, please, here that previously people identified themselves based on region and locale, but now is based on nation. And then, guys, go ahead and flip. Think about it this way. If you're in a foreign country and somebody says, hey, where are you from? More than likely, you're going to answer that, well, I'm from the United States. Where previously, before we had a larger sense of national identity, you would identify yourself maybe like from Pennsylvania, from a larger region, but more often than that, you're going to identify yourself based upon your immediate location. So you would be like, I'm from Jersey Shore, I'm from Avis, I'm from the Valley. And that had been the most common form of identification until we start to get the identification by nation. Now, the idea had existed, oops, let me get the highlighter out here. The idea existed that humans are divided into separate nations, each with a distinctive culture and territory, and deserving an independent political life. Now, this is going to be important in a couple chapters once we start to get into unifying places like Italy and Germany. This situation is also going to cause us some problems that ultimately will help to lead us to World War I. So like I said, this concept of nations and nationalism is going to be an idea and a concept that we're going to be talking about from here on in. The most important loyalties still were to the clan, village, or region. And this honestly is going to be breaking down as we go on, but nonetheless, it's kind of where we stand at this point. Independence movements are going to act in the name of new nations. You want to put down here next to number 2 that Napoleon's conquests stimulated national resistance. Remember, it's these groups who are getting together and organizing themselves against the French and kind of identifying themselves, not necessarily as, like, for example, being Spanish, but they know that they're not French. And then slowly after that, they start to create an identity of what it is to be Spanish, what it is to be German, what it is to be Italian. And again, we'll build upon these. Once this nationalism occurs, these older identities and loyalties are going to be eroded. Like, for example, and this has been going on for quite some time, science is going to weaken the hold of religion. If you want to look at how people identify themselves back in the Middle Ages, it's going to be that they identify themselves as Christian. Once we get to the Protestant Reformation, they'll start to identify themselves based upon what sect of Christianity. Are they Catholic? Are they some Protestant group? Are they Lutheran? Are they Methodist? And that still, even during this time period, is going to continue to be important. We also have migration to cities or abroad that's going to weaken local allegiances, where people are going to be leaving their homes, never to return again. We have a lot of emigration going especially to the United States, and people will lose their previous identity and will adopt a new one. We also have the printing of standardized languages. You want to put down here next to C, because this is going to be kind of important, but you want to put down here next to C, underneath number 3, that languages not printed in books, especially the Bible, will disappear. A good example of this is, so England, they speak English. Unless you're from Wales, then you speak Welsh, or you can speak Welsh. You go up to Scotland, you're speaking Gaelic. But there was a lot more language diversity within England back in the Middle Ages. And there's still some, local remnants of this. Like, for example, there had been a language that was unique to Cornwall, for example. Well, that language that was spoken in Cornwall never got a Bible printed in that language. So over time, that language disappeared. You also have the exact same thing going on in France. The German government, once they unify, is going to work really hard to create a unified German language. Same thing with the Italians once they go and unify as well. Nationalism is also going to be enormously powerful in the 19th century, like I said before, and it's going to inspire the political unification of Italy and Germany, and we'll deal with both of those things in a later chapter. And nationalism is going to take on a variety of ideologies. We have civic nationalism that identifies the nation with a particular territory and encourages assimilation. We also are going to have some that are going to define the nation in racial terms. Germany is going to be a good example with this. But the unique thing here with nationalism, you want to go ahead and put this down next to number 6. Do you want to put, please, here that nationalism can be both liberal and conservative. Where it falls in the political spectrum is all about how that identity is being used. Is it being used to be inclusive? Is it being used to be exclusive? Is it being used to maintain the status quo? Is it being used to create something new? All of that will dictate where on the political spectrum nationalism is going to fall. But the important thing, and again, this is going to be where we're going to spend a lot of time in some future chapters, is nationalism is not going to be limited to Europe. In fact, you want to go ahead and put a star there by number 7. Because again, this is something that we are going to build upon in some future chapters coming up here. Now with feminism, the other ism, again, this is going to be something we're going to be dealing with off and on for the rest of the year. The feminist movement is going to develop in the 19th century, especially in Europe and in North America. It's going to come to other places later, but there's some other things that need to occur in order for feminism to take root in these areas. The European Enlightenment thinkers sometimes challenged the idea that women were innately inferior. And during the French Revolution, some women argued that liberty and equality must include women. Guys, you can go ahead and flip to page 9. You actually are going to have a participant, a philosopher, as well as a revolutionary named Olympia de Gouges, who ultimately will be beheaded because of her revolutionary activities. She actually goes and takes the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, which, you know, for the French Revolution, it's sort of kind of like their Bill of Rights. And she takes it and she rewrites it to purposely put women into that document. So it's no longer the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. Instead, it's the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and Citizen here as well. Again, you know, throwing them in the whole mix here. Women are going to increasingly join temperance movements, charities, abolitionist movements, missionary work. Now, this isn't going to be everybody. So you want to put down here next to C, underneath number 2, you want to put down especially middle-class women. Especially middle-class women. We also are starting to get some distinctions within the school of feminist thought. The first one is going to be this maternal feminism that argues for women's distinctive roles as mothers. What's going on with this, and this is probably the older of the versions of feminism, is that women need better education, they need property rights because it will make them better mothers. If they have better education, then they will be better able to do the early education of their children, especially their sons. If they have property rights, then if their husband leaves them or they have to divorce their husband, which by the way is really difficult to do, they would be able to support themselves and their children. They wouldn't become a burden upon anyone else. The first organized expression of feminism takes place at the Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, New York in 1848. This feminist movement is going to be transatlantic from the beginning. There's going to be a lot of connection between English feminists and feminists in North America, especially within the United States. By the 1870s, the movement focused above all on suffrage, although you want to put down here next to number 5 that they first focused on property rights. Remember, keep in mind that women's property, whether it's like cash or land or anything, doesn't belong to them. It belongs to their husbands. So upon divorce, or the husband just leaves, all of that wealth goes with him as well. So what happens is that the first feminist movement is all about getting women these property rights where they can maintain and control property in their own names. They then take that property right and they roll it into the right to vote or suffrage, because they're going to claim, hey, wait a second, male property owners have the right to vote. Why shouldn't all property owners, including women, also have the right to vote as well? The movements here are going to include middle class, not just simply the elite. So this is going to be one of those few movements that is trickling down the social ladder. Most are going to work through peaceful protest and persuasion. However, some of these, in fact, you do want to get down here next to B, underneath number 5, that some do turn to violence. Some do turn to violence. You actually have some women in England who plot to poison David Lloyd George, the British Prime Minister. You have some who will blow up mailboxes. And we're not talking about like the little American mailboxes. I mean, a good Victorian mailbox is made out of cast iron that is at least, 2 or 3 inches thick and probably about as big around as a decent sized oak tree and maybe a little bit shorter than I am. I mean, these are not just like these wimpy little post boxes. The women's movement here eventually will become a mass movement in most of the industrialized countries by the turn of the century. So again, this continues to trickle down to all levels of women. It's not going to be like these other movements like the Renaissance, the Scientific Revolution, or the Enlightenment, where only a handful of elites are going to be participating. This is going to be truly a mass movement. Ultimately here, the feminist movement, especially in regards to suffrage, in the 19th century, in the 1800s, isn't going to make a lot of advancement, except in New Zealand, where in 1793 they become the first country to grant universal male suffrage. Most of the victories are going to come in the 1900s, in the 20th century, specifically after World War I. The movement had led to, by the way, a discussion of women's roles in society. Taboo sexual topics were aired. There were deeper debates over women's proper role are going to take place. And just like with everything, there's going to be some bitter opposition to the movement. And there's going to be 2 big reasons. So you want to go ahead next to A and B underneath 8. You want to go ahead and put a star right here, because these are 2 big reasons. Some are going to argue that the strains of education and life beyond the home would cause reproductive damage, that it would essentially cause women too much stress for them to have healthy children. Some are going to see suffragettes, Jews, and socialists as a foreign body in national life, that these aren't ideas that are homegrown, that these are ideas that are coming from outside. And in a period of increasing nationalism and national identity, this is going to put the brakes on this movement and some of these other movements that are perceived in the same way as well. Eventually here, feminism will spread beyond Europe and the United States, excuse me, but less widely than nationalism. And the little note here I want you to put down next to this, just add at the end of 9, and much later as well. We'll see that feminism in some places like India, Africa, the Middle East are only going to come in post-imperialism. So, a lot of this stuff is a little bit late coming to the party.